Greetings and welcome to the Halloween edition of the Sliders Review. And I'm here today to talk to you about The Haunting Hour, Season 2, Episode 10. So the episode is called The Hole, and The Hole is actually a pretty decent episode. There's some really cool things that happen, but mostly towards like the end. It's not one of my favorite all-time episodes. I've stated before when it comes to R.L. Stine, The Haunting Hour, I really love season 1, and I loved like the first couple of episodes in season 2, but then after that it started to go downhill. And I think one of the reasons why it started to go downhill is because parents probably found this show a little too freaky for their kids, a little too spooky, a little too scary. And I've noticed that when it came to teen horror around this time, everything had like a moral lesson. It was like in the show Creeped Out. It started happening in The Haunting Hour in season 3. Episodes will start off pretty good, but then fall kind of flat towards the end. And that's because in season 1 of The Haunting Hour, it was a bit more darker than that of R.L. Stine Goosebumps and stuff. But I've made videos about both shows and how I felt Goosebumps is still superior to that of The Haunting Hour, because when you actually look at The Haunting Hour and how it ended and how it went, there's just a lot that is just undesirable, like the music, the locations, the cast, the acting, how episodes will fall flat towards like the end. It's just one of those things. But after rewatching The Hole, I will say it is pretty like enjoyable and stuff. I wish there was more happening in the episode, and I wish we could have got a heck of a lot more after that huge twist cliffhanger at the end. This episode actually reminds me of the movie called The Messengers, and that starred Kristen Stewart, and that was actually a pretty good movie. Basically, it's about like, a family who moves into like a new house. There was a murder with the previous family, and a bunch of ghosts haunt the house. And this is basically what this episode is about. Now, remember, just because this is an R.L. Stine show does not mean he wrote this episode. In fact, just like with Goosebumps and The Nightmare Room and this and Eye Candy and Fear Street, he never writes the material for these episodes or movies. It's helmed by a completely different writing staff that adapts his work. However, when it comes to that of Fear Street, when it comes to that of The Haunting Hour, these aren't necessarily based on R.L. Stine's work. Some of the episodes in season 1 are based on his work, but other episodes are just completely made up by like the production staff and stuff. And so with this, one thing that's interesting is, once again, like I said before, just like that Messenger movie, this deals with a family who moves into a new house. And the brother-sister duo, is interesting. They actually get along. Normally in R.L. Stine's like properties, they don't. And they normally pick on each other or try to scare each other. But Rob and Carrie actually get along. And Rob goes out his way to like comfort his sister. Like when the power goes out for a thunderstorm, he sleeps in her room to make sure she's okay, because there's something freaky going on in the house. There's first a presence of like a ghost when Carrie's in her room and the door closes by itself and locks. She automatically assumes that is her brother. Then when she's decorating her wall and she's putting everything up and she has a lot of stuff up on the wall, all of a sudden it disappears. And so she has no idea what's going on. So one morning, a hole just magically appears in the backyard. And so she thinks there's a ghost that's doing all this, but the brother is gonna try to figure out what the heck is going on. So he takes the video recorder and he just records the whole overnight. When he watches the footage, he sees that it's weird. It records something in the past during the day of this other family. The kids are out like in the patio in the backyard, like kind of like a barbecue and everything with the family, and then all of a sudden the dad gets really pissed at the family. Like he's really enraged, angry. Nobody knows who this man is or this family, but then all of a sudden, I think like a photograph of like the family shows up, and the kids see like a license plate, I believe, in like the garage or something like that. And when they investigate whose it might be, they realize it belonged to the family that lived here before and the man in that video. The family died in a car accident. And so the kids believe, with how angry this guy is, that the father, he might have killed his family, similar to that of the Messengers movie. So they tell their mom, but of course she doesn't believe it. Now, the mom I did not recognize at first until I looked her up. I remember her from an episode of Sliders back in season 1 that has to do with like an illness. I can't believe she's the doctor lady and stuff. That's insane. So anyway, she doesn't believe nothing until a bunch of freaky stuff starts to happen. Basically, it's your typical ghost trope of the ghost like throwing stuff around, smashing dishes, stuff like that. I like this. It's really cool. I love these ghost tropes. This whole paranormal type thing of stuff flying around, smashing on walls. But then they upped it up a little bit more by dragging the mom and taking her outside. Typical ghost trope stuff where you grab a person by like the ankles and you just drag them and everything. And it tries to put her in the hole. I love this paranormal stuff. I'm so glad they finally did it in the R.L. Stine property. Well, they technically did it in Goosebumps, but that wasn't a ghost. It was just a regular human kid who was invisible. Anyways, so the dad comes home and he hears a lot of crazy stuff going on. So he's frantically trying to get in the house, but realizes it's coming from the backyard. So he rescues his wife, but then he gets sucked down in the hole. Only for him to climb his way out and the family to help pull him out. Well, the craziest thing happened. A week later, the family is still living there. And it's just kind of like, why? It's kind of like, there's a mysterious hole in your backyard. There's ghost paranormal stuff going around. And they tried to kill both parents. Why did the parents decide to stay in that house? It makes no sense. But, the dad had like a contractor just cover up the hole with like pavement. And so now they're out having a cookout and everything in their backyard. Then the big twist happens. The dad acts very angry, similar to the dad from the family from previous. And the family just looks at him all freaky because he's repeating the same lines as the ghost father, which means that the ghost father took possession of the living father's body when he was in that hole, and it ends. And it just makes you wonder what the heck happened after that. This is why I wish there was more to this ending, or they could have showed more of that in the middle and everything. Because they took way too long to set up with the kids being nice to each other, doing the investigation. They could have cut some of that out and put in more of the dad getting taken and him acting funny, more towards the middle and the end, Because if the dad's demeanor would have changed in the middle, then all of a sudden at the very end of the episode, he repeats what the ghost dad said. Then that would have clicked in viewers' head and stuff. And be a bit more cooler. So, like I said, all in all, it's a pretty good episode and I really enjoy it. But I just wish there was more. That wasn't that spooky. Alright, well, I shall talk to y'all later. Bye.